Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to our the Gospel Daily Exposition. And still, we are in our series of the importance of understanding what is sin. So, ato nang define ang sin in a brief and summary type. And now we are going to talk about the original sin. Now, daghan kayo mga debates regarding aning original sin. Um, some would argue that it pertains to the first act of um, Adam and Eve. Let's see if that is what really means by the original sin. And there are also debate with regards din to the secular view of sin. So mingon sila nga ang ang source sa sin is ang uh, social, or the other one is environmental. But today we are going to talk about the original sin and what it is and how it affects um, us in a universal aspect. Okay, so the first one is that original sin. Okay, so what is original sin? To set the context, let's look at some biblical texts nga naghisgot regarding sa original sin. It is very important to look at the Bible because we founded our understanding of all things, especially sin, salvation, human being, God, ethics in a biblical account. So again, dili na ko i-exhaust maayo ang tibuok nga Bible, but I would present some of, or at least three verses nga hisgot regarding aning sin. So the first on the list is in Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 9. We are told, or Jeremiah says, that the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately sick. Who can understand it? So it implies that no one is exclusive or excluded from this reality that ang awang heart is an idol factor. Oxygen Calvin pa, ang atong heart is the factory of idols. And because whatever we do, it always comes to our wants gid, mobalik gid sa atong desire. uh, and sometimes making utang this is good for us, but in reality or in God's sight it's not. So it becomes an idol. It is universally uh, true that our heart is deceitful. And the other one that supports this idea is in Romans chapter 3 verse 23, that says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. uh, the implication or the theological assertion here is that all, okay, that means wala excluded. uh, Kisa tong ning self-claim nga he is wala siya sala, he just deceived himself or herself. So all have sinned, and um, ang result ani nga sin is in falling short of God's glory. So there is a separation of human being from God himself. And the third one is in Titus chapter 1 verse 15, which says, to the pure all things are pure, but to the defile and unbelieving nothing is pure, but both their minds and their conscience are defiled. They profess to know God, but they deny him by their works. They are detestable, disobedient, unfit for any good works. So, kung si Jeremiah, nag-ingon siya nga ang atong heart is deceitful, what Paul is emphasizing here is the conscience and mind is defiled. So it always goes back to the uh, reality of human depravity. So unfit kita sa good works if we are not being cured by God Himself. So the reality of sin, the reality of original sin or sin nature of sa atuwa is very explicit. Nganong gina emphasize gina siya in a biblical narrative, because the moment we understand ourselves, how dark our heart is, the moment we can conclude to ourselves that we can do nothing in order to save ourselves, that means we need is a rescuer, we need a redeemer, a savior that is powerful enough to save our sin. So much for that. That is the context of our understanding of what is or what original sin really is. So original sin, the first thing that we have to understand is that ang original sin does not refer to the first sin, okay, or the first cause or the first sin of Adam and Eve, but to the result of that sin. So daghan na ingon na because siguro sa confusion sa word nga origin, we think of those first cause. But no, the original sin is the first effect or the first result of that, okay, the result of that uh, um, kanang act of disobedient, of act of sin ni Adam and Eve, and this result is exponentially is spreading in time space universe as far as human being is concerned. So kini nga result of sin, kini original sin is now embedded in every human being nga matawo, uh, from birth. Okay, I would argue it's from birth nga ang tanang tao is nagi na siya, ang kining original sin, ang result of the act of sin ni Adam and Eve is now in human being, and so we are totally depraved, no one is righteous, and again we are separated from God. That is original sin. So it's not the first act of sin. Okay, it's not the first act of sin of Adam and Eve. That's very clear. But the result, and kitang tanan, the moment nga mataw ta, we are sinners. So number two is all people are born. Okay, as I said that exponentially spreading, it are born with a sinful nature or original sin. So that means kung mahisgot ta og original sin, we are talking about the sinful nature of human being. So all people, natao ta, all people are born with sinful nature. We have that. Bisan pa man mag-observe ka sa imong bata how selfish our children are. Kung gutomon, they love their own. So this is very important to understand that the original sin, ha, dili na siya, di ta mo kuan sa first, the cause, but the effect, and this effect is spread wide, universally. Okay, so because this is ang original sin means sinful nature, so it is wrong ang gisulti ni Joel Austin, your favorite smiling Joel Austin, who says that 99.9 of people are good people. Now, if that is true, kung tinuod na siya nga 99.9 um, of all people, no, of humanity is good people, why there are wars, why there are exploitation, why there are the church are becoming, exploiting by those false prophet, why Peter said that there are false prophet who exploit the church, and why there are slaveries, why there are racist, why anong wala ma equality. One of the reason is that 99.9% of people are evil people, are bad people, okay, are sinful people. We are all sinful human being. So your guy Joel Austin is wrong in this assertion. He doesn't know what he's talking about, that 99.9% of people are good people, or probably that 1% is him. uh, he assert that. So again, sa dihang na tao ta, ang sinful nature is already there, that been originated from our forefather Adam and Eve. So since this is exponentially spreading, so number three, the universality of sin is explained by the fall of humankind. Okay, we should do that. We should explain the universality of this sin uh, by the fall of humankind, and not pointing to social and environmental factor. So daghan gingon nga, well, nganong inana na siya is because na condition man gud siya sa iyang society, or na condition siya sa iyang environment. No, 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 no. No. Ang usa ka tawo, he lived accordingly in accordance to what is his nature. That means a fallen nature. So bisan pa maning tawha na naghatag mag good sa ihang isigatawo, there is a tendency that what he are doing is always pertains to uh, kanang sa ihang self glorification. So that's how wicked our heart, our self is. So dili na to uma-accuse ang social struggle, Dili na to ma-accuse usab ang environmental problems. In other words also, dili na to masulbad ang sin, ang original sin, or ang sinful nature sa katao, based on this what is the best social, political, cultural, um, ideology must be impart to a nation. So utopians or capitalism, no, the problems of what is going on in our world is because we are all sinful nature, simple human being. That's it. And we should explain that. If we are going to ask the question, so what how do we solve this? We cannot solve this by our own clever thing. How can we explain this? Is there any an plausible explanation for all this nature or sin that's going on around us? Yes, there is, and we should explain that in the context of fallen human being. For all have sinned and fall short of God's glory, and that's why we we have a tendency to create our own idols, to create our own survival kit. Din sa kalibutan, when I said survival kit, survival for our own life, that we must hate others, or we must, uh, and just for the sake of our own self. So here's the thing, as what the Bible really tells us, that for all have sinned, and so we have to understand that that's racism and all those evil thing that's happening in the world must be explained in the falling of man. So here's also one thing to must we understand, is that we all sin because we are sinners by nature. So sa Bisaya pa, makasala ta is because first of all makasasala ta. So dili siya reverse nga makasasala ta mao nang makasala ta. No, it's not. We are all sinful by nature. We are all sinners, fall short of the glory of God, and that's why the tendency of that sinful nature will be manifested in us. That's why makasinta before other human being, and also towards God. Now the question is, nganong kinanglan mato ni siya masabtan? Nganong why this is very important to understand? Well, it is the fact that ang ang reality's explanations of original sin is so much debating by some Christians and some notions. No, if you are a secular, if you are not a religious person, you might tendency nga ang tao is purely good, like like your guy Joel Austin once says that 99.9% of people are good people. So for the secular people, to those who are unbelieving people, they do not believe that people are sinners, sinful. But the fact that it's but the fact is contradictory to what he has believing, or what we have believed, what he has believed. Um, because how do you explain those effect of this sin, uh, the racism, the political selfishness, uh, the cultural um, disagreement, and national exploitations, and all of that? So you cannot explain that by saying that all are good people. So because that's what it is, that's what happened, that's the reality. If there is an evidence for the evilness of our nature, look at the world. Just look at the world, just look at the world, just observe the world. Don't go to the Bible first, okay? If you want, just look at the world, just observe what happened there, why there are so many exploitations, why there are so wars, and all of that. Why there are some disagreement, even for those religious person, because that's the reality of sin. And the moment we are falling short of God's glory, the moment we make our own gods, and the moment we exalt our own gods by other gods, that's what happened also in the ancient Near Eastern, or in ancient time, or even in our present times, in a multi-gods culture. So kini si God is better than your God. um so that's why we have to understand that. And also we have to understand, we have to understand why this is very important to understand our sinful nature or the original sins, because we have to explain our condition, our fallen condition, in the light of the falling short of God's glory, in the light of the fallen of a humankind at the very beginning. God create in the beginning, God created everything was good, and because man sinned, we have been separated from God Himself, from His presence Himself. And so another also thing to do, I mean, to understand why this is very important is because the moment we understand our sinful darkness life, we will be able to appreciate how glorious, how righteous, how holy God is. Ug na dili nato na siya mayamak-yamakan lang, dili lang nato siya ma 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 masana ma-stamp sa atuang tiil, or mo self-claim lang ta sa iya nga he is our friend because he's loving. No. The moment we see ourselves as a sinful creature, as a sinful human being, the moment we appreciate the work of Christ on the cross, the moment we understand how dark we are, how live darkness, how are we so desperately living in the darkness, and we cannot rescue our own dark life. The moment we will be able to humble ourselves before the righteous God and ask for His mercy. The moment we also realize that God's grace is enough for our salvation, and the moment also we understand this, the moment we also see that that no matter how good works we are doing to appease God or to please God, it's nothing compared to the grace of God that is shown to save us. Now, let me end this with this question, with this verse, Titus 1:5. To the pure, all things are pure, but to the defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure. But both their minds and their conscience are defiled. They profess to know God, but they deny Him by their works. They are detestable, disobedient, unfit for any good works. The fact that Apostle Paul tells Titus, who is ministering in Crete, uh, there is important things to do in a church, good works that God has prepared before us. A person can only serve God when he is pure, and a person can only be pure if Christ or God Himself purify him. And Apostle Paul argues here that those who are unbelieving, although they are belong to the fellowship of the believers, but shipping like clothes, shipping like sheep like clothes, but those are the unbelieving and defiled in mind. Uh, their mind and conscience are defiled, and although they profess to know God, but their works is never manifested it. So if you are listening to this, how do you know how deep you are concerned with your sin? And I encourage you, as long as you understand that how dark you are, how dark your heart is, that moment God is inviting you to repent from your sin and humble before Him and ask for forgiveness. I hope you learn from this short reflection on the original sin, and may God bless your heart. God bless you all.